Hi, I'm Rick Dior, and today we're going to talk about playing fast R&B rhythms and rock rhythms with the right hand, so the strong hand. So you saw there I was playing a tune called The Chicken. It's an old tune played by lots of R&B bands. Maceo Parker used to play it. Obviously, Jocko has that on one of his records, Word of Mouth, which is great. Peter Erskine plays on that. I highly recommend checking that out. So the whole idea behind that first demo I played you was to show you several different ways of playing fast, one-handed rhythms in this style. So you saw I opened up with this kind of motion. So that's called a shaft tip motion. So you're hitting with the shaft and then the tip of the stick. And you're using your wrist in a floppy kind of style to do this. Now, lots and lots and lots of drummers use this. Notable examples, Jeff Porcaro always used it. So if you went to see him play back in the day with Toto, or you listened to him on any Boz Scaggs records or all the records he played on, he would use that technique extensively. Now, in the beginning of rock and roll, there was two kinds of drummers. There were drummers who didn't have a lot of taught technique. That doesn't mean they weren't great drummers. It just means they didn't study. So their technique was a little bit stiffer, like that. So a good example of that might be Ringo Starr, who, if you saw him initially, he would play. So that was the style. If you went back and you watched the Ed Sullivan stuff and watched him play on there, he played with that kind of sweeping style, but mostly wrist. What happened, though, is that a lot of the R&B drummers came from jazz, and they already were playing. Now that would turn into shuffle rhythms like this. And sometimes they would go really fast. So those drummers came from a jazz background, and they started playing R&B and then rock. So they already had that motion, and if you would see those drummers play, they'd play like this. And I'll put a listing like I always do in the credits. I don't want to mention any one person here so I don't offend anyone. But I'll put a big listing of drummers to listen to and watch on YouTube so you can see this. So we had these two kind of schools of drummers, the ones that came from jazz and the ones that had just started playing rock and weren't necessarily trained. And those styles kind of converged to influence other young folks who were playing, and they came up with the modern style, which is a combination of all those things. So if you're going to play any kind of modern funk, rock, or pop, or R&B gig, you're going to need these kinds of techniques. So that right hand needs to be able to move at a certain tempo, so you're not always playing this. There's nothing wrong with that, but if you do that, then the left hand is stuck on the hi-hat. Now, one thing you can do, and you saw me doing it in that demo, is to do a combination of things. So you can switch surfaces like this. So slowly that looks like this. So I'm doing this pattern. So it's kind of a flam pattern. And that makes up for the left hand coming over to the snare. And that's a lot more interesting than just doing this. And again, that definitely has its place, but it's not as funky as this. So when you play that, you're able to do a lot of shaft work there and tip work, which gives you lots of varying accents instead of just that sound. So that's something to work on. Now, when you play with just the right hand, that left hand is free to do some ghosting. So it adds a little spices to your groove. It's not just this. So that's really one benefit of being able to play quickly with your right hand. Now another benefit is you can open the hi-hat, which sounds pretty cool like this. And that technique is a push-pull technique. I did a whole video on that if you want to look back on YouTube. But the right hand is doing a drop and then a pick. So it looks like that. Now the advantage of that is it's elastic. In other words, you can change the shape and feel of that groove. So instead of just doing this, which is pretty much stuck in that 16th note feel, you can change that by widening the way your hand's moving. So So you see there, I'm doing more of a shuffle there. And on the right hand, on the cymbal, that's really fun because you can get variations on the bell that you couldn't get if you were just doing it kind of straight-armed. So those are the three techniques that I will use on the hi-hat. Now you can also do it old style, and that's this. And certainly if you're playing rock, you can do. There is a lot to be said about that straight eighth hi-hat, and that works with a lot of older music. If you're playing any like Creedence Clearwater Revival or older Beatles and stuff like that, you want to do that to remain authentic to the original tune. All right, so let's show you another little thing here. I'll show you sort of a shuffle groove that's a little bit quicker. So you see there, I'm doing what I showed you before, where I'm playing that right hand like this. So that right hand is just in automatic pilot. I can go on all day like that. Doesn't really take much energy because I'm just doing this. And then I'm dropping the stick and I'm picking it up. And again, that whole video on push-pull, you might want to look at that because I slow it down and I show you exactly how I do it. But that is an option, and it's totally worth learning for that kind of groove. Another kind of groove you might want to look at is a fast rock groove. I remember when I was younger, living in New York in the 1970s and 80s, I played in some punk bands, and we used to play at CBGB's and Bitter End and clubs like that. And man, we played so fast, and I don't think I could do it now, but you know, all 120 pounds of me back then. But, you know, all night we'd play. Someone in a more modern band, Blink-182, with Travis Barker, he's really good at playing those tempos, and he uses that exact kind of technique where he's moving like this. And that's the secret. Otherwise, under the hot lights, it gets really hot, and playing a whole set, maybe an hour, if you can't do that, your arm's basically going to not be working close to the middle of that set. So the whole idea is to just relax and use your shoulder like this, like a whip motion. And the stick is held really loosely, so you're just doing that. You don't want to do this. You'll never make it. And it'll slow down, and the band will get mad with you, okay? They won't be happy. So you need to do that. Now, if you play the bell, you can do the bell on every quarter note and then play eighth notes off the bell. So that's an example of that. So if you have to play really fast, rock, punk, any of that stuff. I'll list a lot of drummers who do this really well in several styles. So I'll list some rock drummers, some jazz drummers, and some funk drummers. So let's just play a little for you, and I'll play kind of a fast rock thing here, and we'll call it a day. So hopefully this helps, and I got a lot of questions on this because I did some fast jazz videos, and guys and gals were emailing me saying, hey, do some, how do you play fast rock? How do you play fast funk and all that? So again, hopefully this helps.